Now we'll look at S9-8. And this is what the question says. The Tolko Importers Incorporated had the following balances at the end of the year before the year-end adjustments. So we say AR of 148,000 and the allowance for doubtful accounts is at 4,000. The aging of accounts receivable yields these data. So we've got our aging chart here. Part 1 of this question says to journalize Tolko Importers entry to adjust the allowance account to its correct year-end balance. So we're given this percentage uncollectible here for each of the various ages. So we're using the aging of accounts receivable method here. So to know the entry that we need to record, first we need to figure out what the estimated uncollectible amount is. So we multiply the receivables in that aging category by the percentage that is believed to be uncollectible. So for 0 to 60 days, we take 140 times 3%, gives us 4,200. And then the same thing for over 60, 8,000 times 20% equals 1,600. And then to get our total, we just add these up and we get 5,800. So are we going to book that full amount in our journal entry? No, because now that we've switched to this aging of AR, we're basing it on the AR that we have at this balance sheet date at the end of the year. So this is the target allowance for doubtful accounts that we want. So of the full 148 of receivables, we don't think we'll collect 5,800. That's our estimate. So that's what we want as our balance in the allowance for doubtful accounts. But we see from the question, it's already sitting at $4,000. So the entry we do will just be for the difference to get this balance up to 5,800. So we use the same accounts. Debit bad debt expense, and credit the allowance for doubtful accounts. I'm just going to put AFTA for short. But here we take the 5,800 target minus the 4,000 that's already there. So we're only going to do our entry for 1,800. Okay. Part 2 says to prepare the T account for the allowance for doubtful accounts. So I'm just going to extend this one that we've got here. We've started with the 4,000. Now we just booked a credit, so we can add that 1,800. And at the end of the year, now our adjusted balance is 5,800. And that is what we want because that's our target. So we're not booking the full 5,800, we just book the difference. Okay, now part 3 says repeat question 1, assuming that instead of aging AR, the allowance is calculated as 3.5% of the AR balance. So this is the percentage of accounts receivable method instead. So here we need to use the full balance of AR, so our 148,000, and we just apply the 1 percentage. So the 3.5 percentage, we apply that to the full balance. So if we multiply 148 times 3.5%, we end up with $5,180. And again, since we're using our AR balances, this is our target. So we want to get to 5,180. And we're ignoring what we recorded before. So now we're just saying our opening balance was 4,000. You wouldn't do this in addition to what we did in part 1. We are doing it instead. So that's why we go back to that $4,000. And that means we need to book 1,180 in our journal entry. So we would debit bad debt expense and credit the allowance for doubtful accounts for 1,180. And if we quickly do the T account here, we'd started at 4,000. Now we've booked this additional 1,180. So we end at 5,180, which is what we want because that was our target. Okay, so those are the two allowance methods here, and then the previous video looked at percentage of sales. So for these two methods where we're using our accounts receivable, it's the balance sheet methods, and therefore we're adjusting to our target. Percentage of sales, we were using the income statement, so we were actually calculating the bad debt expense. So for percentage of sales, whatever we calculated, that was the amount we used in our entry. Here, we adjust for the differences to get to the target that we've calculated.